the One Network News Hour tonight, Ruapehu's rumblings grow stronger.
The volcano's danger level is upgraded as activity intensifies.
The volcanic activity makes an impact throughout the central North Island.
And in other news, relief arrives for a four-wheel drive group trapped in a sudden cold snap.
Our top story, Ruapehu rages. After a weekend spewing rocks, ash and mud, scientists today upgraded their warnings, and just 7 minutes ago, another majestic plume went sky high. Some scientists are predicting a major eruption within hours, although they say it won't be as bad as 1945's devastating eruption. A general evacuation from the mountain slopes is in force, and the desert road was closed early this afternoon because of ash falls. We have a team coverage. Ash is falling as far away as Hawke's Bay, and the mountain's fury can be seen clearly in Taupo. But first, Simon Mersip has been following today's dramatic events at Mount Ruapehu.
A level 4 eruption, the sort that has scientists convinced a big one is on its way. From first light, the energy contained within the mountain was obvious. A continuous stream of explosions tossing rocks and ash far and wide, setting off sirens from the ski field's early warning Laha system. By early morning, roads up to the mountain were closed. Only those coming down from the ski field lodges were allowed past the barriers. That didn't stop plenty of sightseers taking advantage of seeing nature's fury at close hand. Plumes of smoke over 10 kilometres high dropped ash over the desert road and into the Kaimanawa Ranges. On the east of the mountain, ash could be clearly seen, not only in the air, but on the slopes, and nearby rivers looked dirty grey.
All the activity on the mountain is affecting the ability of pilots to fly. We're all right now because we're under the clouds, but civil aviation says no one can fly into the clouds and above up to 30,000 feet. They can't fly by instruments. They can't fly at night. It's all because of concerns of the ash and the steam and the cloud that's all around this area now.
Last night's eruption had already convinced ski field operators to close for at least the next 3 days.
That decision was taken last night before the events of this morning, and our feeling was to go, and it was a decision made in conjunction with Tura and on the following discussions with Department of Conservation, Police and the scientific community.
But as the intensity and frequency of eruptions increased dramatically, other authorities went into action. The Department of Conservation ordered everyone off the mountain, and Civil Defence held an emergency meeting.
We're monitoring the situation very carefully and closely indeed, and if the wind changes, then we'll be ready to deal with the situation.
Although authorities don't believe the situation is life-threatening, they still have a warning for the public. Don't put yourself or emergency services at risk. Simon Mersip, One Network News.
As you heard, Civil Defence is monitoring the situation to decide if and when to declare a state of emergency, although some people are evacuating voluntarily, including families at the Waiouru Army Base. At this stage, Civil Defence says there is no life-threatening danger to communities in the area, but the Army at Trentham in Upper Hutt is on standby to move in if needed. There's been no decision on whether to evacuate Whakapapa village, but sightseers are worrying emergency personnel. Across the region, ash on power lines is causing power surges, and people should protect their tank water supplies by disconnecting roof guttering from tanks so ash doesn't contaminate the water. An 0900 number will start operating soon. We'll bring you that number for Civil Defence information just after 6:30.
And meantime, ash from Mount Ruapehu is causing problems for air travellers as well as motorists. 2 airports on the North Island's east coast have been closed, and as you heard from Simon Mersip, Civil Aviation's imposed flight restrictions over the Tongariro National Park. Ray Lamb reports the ash is falling as far away as Hawke's Bay, 140 kilometres from the mountain.
Volcanic ash has been falling in Hawke's Bay for much of the day. It can't easily be seen, but leaves a coating like fine talcum powder on everything it touches. It's particularly hard on the eyes and, for some, the lungs.
Well, I've had a couple of asthmatics today talking about it.
For planes, it's potentially disastrous because it causes engine damage. At Napier Airport, they're not taking any chances.
Are we travelling or are we not?
Unfortunately not today, not by air.
All flights today were cancelled and the airport's closed indefinitely.
Oh, well,
yeah, we've put all our aircraft away because we've had quite a big build-up on the leading edges of the wings and on the prop and on the engine and that.
Further north, Gisborne Airport is tonight also out of action. Civil aviation has declared a large part of the lower North Island an aviation danger zone, with operations prohibited in cloud or at night because the ash can't be seen. Air travellers aren't the only ones affected. Ash has also closed the desert road between Turangi and Waihuru. Ray Lamb, One Network News.
And as Mount Ruapehu spreads its fury across a wide area, out to the northeast, yet another volcano is acting up. Scientists have been watching White Island for much of this month, and today it was spewing steam. White Island is expected to enter a more active phase 2.
But the main action is on Ruapehu, and rumblings of activity on Ruapehu have been drawing attention for days now. These mudflows resulted from the first eruption last Monday morning. At the time, the mountain was shrouded in cloud, concealing Ruapehu's biggest eruption in 20 years. The mudflow destroyed a Department of Conservation footbridge which used to cross this stream. On Wednesday, the mountain flared up again, dumping grey ash on the snow at the summit of the volcano. Even the scientists monitoring the mountain had to beat a hasty retreat as Ruapehu put on its biggest display of firepower in 50 years.
Ruapehu's throwing its party. It knows how to celebrate.
But over the weekend, the celebrations took an even more destructive turn. Lava from a Saturday night blast took its toll on this alpine hut.
Oh, I don't... Shame. Oh, who's up there? I hope no one's up there.
But it was only yesterday that the public had the chance to see Ruapehu in full flight.
I think we better get the hell out of here.
And we'll keep you up with the latest across this news hour. Also, later, a close-up look at Mount Ruapehu's black history, plus what they call New Zealand's Rim of Fire and its place in Maori legend.
And in around 3 this afternoon and measured 4.3 on the Richter scale. There are no reports of damage.
For farmers, it's brought snow and stock losses. For 18 people on a four-wheel drive day trip, it meant a night stranded in the cold. Mark Price begins our coverage.
The 11 Dunedin adults and 7 children were thrilled to be back from the hills this afternoon. They'd spent the night dossed down on their four-wheel drives.
There was 8 of us in this vehicle, so we were pretty warm. We had one blanket, so we were fighting over that half the night. But
their day trip into the Lammerlaw Range turned to disaster when they went to explore an old gold mining site. One vehicle got stuck.
Got them out, headed for home, and then it started to snow, and the steepest part we had to go up was just too much.
A member of the party raised the alarm on his cell phone from a hilltop, and this morning a tractor came to their rescue. Bad weather had been forecast, but police today accepted the party had been caught out.
Just really caught out by the weather, I guess. Stacked against it, a newborn Southland lamb begins the battle for survival. Over the past 30 hours, thousands of lambs have died. 260 collected from one farm gate alone. Snow up to 40 centimetres deep is coating farms near Tiana. After the worst winter on record here, it's a further test of patience and profitability.
Well, it's virtually impossible. It's a losing game.
Grass that had finally started to grow in last week's spring warmth is buried. Winter feed supplies are virtually all gone.
But hopefully in 2-3 days this will be gone and it'll be water under the bridge.
Farmers are desperately hoping it won't freeze tonight and there'll be a quick thaw. John McDermott, One Network News.
Plumes pouring out of the crater, rocks thrown hundreds of metres in the air. We'll update this ominous situation at Ruapehu. Holmes tonight at 7 o'clock.
Mickey Mouse, to say the least. We believe that they had enough sensible people on board to plan something a little bit better.
Stephanie Mills no longer heads the campaign. Reports from Europe say she's been sacked, but Greenpeace here denies that.
She hasn't been able to hold that role because of the fact that she was forcibly removed from French Polynesia. Stephanie's employment status is stable, it's fine. She's still making a huge contribution to the campaign from the Amsterdam office.
Greenpeace International is axing up to 18 of its campaigners, but it says for budgetary reasons only. Stephanie Mills is holidaying in Europe and couldn't be contacted for comment. She'll be returning to New Zealand within a couple of weeks, but before then she's expected to release a statement clarifying her position. However, nothing's stopping the protests against the French testing. 7,000 took to the streets in Brussels. And on a diplomatic front, another chance for New Zealand to argue its case. It's now a full member of the United Nations Committee negotiating a worldwide ban on nuclear testing. Simon Shepherd, One Network News.
In France, a teenager apparently fascinated by Hitler has gone on a killing rampage that's left 11 people dead. The youth bashed to death his immediate family before taking his hunting rifle to a nearby village and shooting at random. Mike Ferguson has details.
The horror began in this farmhouse in rural Provence. A 17-year-old youth bludgeoning his mother, stepfather and 11-year-old brother to death with a baseball bat and hammer. It's believed he then walked 7 kilometres into a nearby village, armed with a hunting rifle. This witness said he watched as the teenager calmly raised the rifle and opened fire. This lady saw the gunman train his sight on his first victim, a woman walking her dog. The teenager then roamed through the village, shooting at random. 8 residents lay dead, another 7 injured, before the gunman turned the rifle on himself. Police say the teenager's bedroom was lined with posters of Hitler and other neo-Nazi themes, but as yet no firm motive has been established for this most horrendous of attacks. Mark Ferguson, One Network News.
Cars tossed into the air and ash carpeting the centre of the island. Could the big one happen tonight? Holmes at 7 o'clock.
Areas say the mountain has been quieter since an eruption of ash and steam just before 6 o'clock. It's continuing to steam. Saturday's spectacular eruption remains the biggest so far, despite the ongoing activity. From lunchtime today, scientists say it's been extremely active, and they're maintaining a level 4 warning on a scale that tops at 5. Civil Defence is yet to declare a state of emergency, but it's monitoring the situation. Shortly, an information phone line will open, and we'll have that number for you then. And in Close-Up tonight, we look at a local perspective on all the activity on Ruapehu and plot the history of significant volcanic eruptions that mark this country's history. Here's Maramena Roderick.
Ruapehu, translated the exploding pit, revered, not feared by local Māori. This is their maunga, and while faith may move a mountain, nothing will move the tribe of Ngāti Rangi from Ohakune.
I'm just taking on what the old people had left behind for us. You are the caretakers, and caretakers must not move.
And over the last century, many lives have been lost to volcanic eruptions. 5 are active, all in the North Island. Ruapehu, the highest peak. Ngauruhoe, which has the earliest recorded eruptions. Tongariro, the third of the Central Plateau volcanoes. And off the east coast, White Island. Aleha killed 10 miners on the island in 1914. And finally, Mount Tarawera, southwest of Rotorua, site of New Zealand's most devastating eruption in recent times. A 6-hour eruption that obliterated 3 villages, killing 153 people and destroying one of the world's natural wonders, the pink and white terraces. It would be almost 80 years before such forces exploded again. That was Ruapehu in 1945. Its first major eruption in 400 years. It claimed no lives, but in 1953, disaster. On Christmas Eve in 1953, a Ruapehu explosion destroyed a railway bridge, and the Wellington-Auckland Express train plunged into the river. 151 people died. Until now, Ruapehu's most recent eruption of note was in 1975, when a river was buried. Today, Ngāti Rangi says Ruapehu is just reiterating its mana, its place in time, its place on the landscape.
It shows its mana, that it's not dormant. It still has its it still has its power within itself there. It's something that that has always been predicted in the past, that it will do this from time to time.
They say, let the mountain speak. Maramena Roderick, One Network News.
And Civil Defence has released a telephone number for anyone wanting information about how it's responding to the Ruapehu eruption. It's 0900 30030. That's 0900 30030. The number's open now, but it will cost you to call.
Come from near and far for a week of rugby and rollicking good times. 200 teams from 25 countries. Their only priority, to have a bit of fun. Most of the teams have been training hard for weeks. The Scots seem particularly confident.
We've been in almost every bar in Christchurch in preparation, planning for this, so we're in fine fettle.
There's no doubt that the Golden Oldies are good for international relations. Even the Bahamas is fronting a team. They may not be known for their performance on the field, but we're told they're great fun at parties.
That's what it's all about!
The injuries are likely to be strained elbows from all the after-match functions.
And before you go on, I presume a wee dram for all involved? That's very kind of you. I'll meet you at the bar after.
John Selwood, One Network News.
But alcohol, at least they won't feel the pain. Well, that's our news hour this Monday.
Holmes has more from Ruapehu. From us, though, good night.
Well, tonight, Ruapehu, will she or won't she, I suppose, is the big question. At the moment, she's a seething, rumbling, angry mountain, a volcano on the brink of eruption. I'm going to be talking to specialists there at the scene. Also tonight, old rugby players never die. As you've just seen in Christchurch, they head to the Golden Oldies tournament. 6,000 of them in Christchurch at the moment, so we're going to have a look at them playing and some of their sports field activities. And a plea from the family and friends of a missing Hawara mother.
If anybody knows where she is, or they've seen something or heard something, please come forward. We just wanted to come home. We need to know.
Well, what a day. The big one could be on its way. What have we so far? Ruapehu is spewing great clouds of ash kilometres into the air as it's done through the weekend. Volcanic dust carpets the centre of the North Island, particularly out to the east. Rocks, mud and smoke are belching from the crater and the smell of sulphur hangs in the air. The desert road is closed, trains have been cancelled, aircraft diverted. Ruapehu's been issuing warning signs for over a week. First came the increased activity in the crater lake and then puffs of steam and then the culmination so far, the spectacular belching of volcanic debris we've seen over the past 48 hours, causing holidaymakers and ski field staff to flee the mountain. Wonderful, really, isn't it? For our scientific community, of course, the eruptions caused great excitement. The volcanologists and other experts and other specialists have descended upon the central North Island, monitoring, watching, listening, feeling, waiting for the major eruption, which could happen at any time. And among those gathered there, we've got Harry Keys. Harry is the volcanologist with the Department of Conservation, and I think with him is Paul Green. Paul is the regional conservative for DOC, and they're with me now, both of them live on the blower from Ruapehu. I might just turn that down a little bit, then we'll get rid of the whistle. Both with me from Whakapapa. Harry Keys, you're on the line with me first, I think.
Yes, Paul.
What's the mountain doing, Harry?
Well, it's quieting down a slight little bit, Paul. It's been a quite violent eruption this afternoon. Fantastic billowing clouds, as you said. But there was quite a big eruption at 6 o'clock, very spectacular in the golden light, beautiful golden cloud billowing up to the upper troposphere. But it's generally sort of waning a wee bit this afternoon.
You made a prediction, though, earlier this morning, Harry. You were quoted earlier this morning as predicting a major blow today. You were confident that the mountain was building for a blow. How accurately can you predict that? Do you hold to that still?
Well, what I said, Paul, was that the possibility of a larger eruption than we'd had has increased. I wasn't predicting a larger eruption. I think that's the Institute of Geological Nuclear Sciences' job to tell us that.
What are the signs you're looking for, then? I mean, what informs you, Harry?
Well, the parameters that we're developing, and there's some good parameters developing, are the size of the eruptions, the frequency of big eruptions, and the deep seismic tremor, which they're monitoring at the Volcanological Observatory at Wairaki.
What side of the mountain is it mainly coming from? What side of the mountain is most threatened, is delivering most of the explosion?
The Crater Lake is the centre of activity. That's all the activities from the Crater Lake. And the hazard from the Crater Lake has been lahars, which are mainly down the Whangahu Valley, which is on the eastern side. And that's where the major hazard. Mangaturu Valley on the north-western side is lahar hazard as well. But then the other hazards are the projectiles, the boulders and rocks that are thrown out up to a bit over a kilometre, maybe a kilometre and a half from the Crater Lake, and then the ashfall. The ashfall is less of a hazard, but it's quite spectacular because that's what most people, I guess, are seeing out on the east. And as you said, it's gone out to the Hawke's Bay. But it remains pretty unpredictable, doesn't it, Harry? I mean, to say, just when you were thinking there was something of a lull, then came a big explosion about 6 o'clock. What are you picking now? What do you think is going to happen? Well, I was talking to Bruce Houghton and Colin Wilson from the Institute just before, and what we were seeing, all the parameters were telling us mid-afternoon, was that the mountain was waxing and waning on an increasing trend. Okay, but Colin's feeling now that we're sort of perhaps reaching a sort of quasi-steady state with waxing and waning on a quasi-steady state, if you can understand that. So, has that been a blow or not? We don't know, Paul. There's more. The mountain's very active. Good on you, Harry. Harry, could you put Paul Green on, please, for me? Thank you very much, Harry, for your time. Paul Green is the regional conservator for DOC. You there, Paul?
Yeah, there, Paul.
So what are you saying to people now, Paul? Say people around, say, 20 or 30 kilometres around the mountain. What are you telling them?
Well, we're asking people not to visit the higher levels of the ski field. So we've closed each ski field. They're closed. There's no one in the club huts at Whakapapa. And we're quite satisfied with people being at Whakapapa Village. We don't believe there's a threat here at this stage. And we're also wanting people not to walk around Mount Ruapehu on the walking track because that crosses some of these valleys where the lahars flow down. All right, so Oakuni, you're quite happy about, people in Waihuru you're quite happy about? Yes, well, they are the responsibility of civil defence in those towns, but we don't see any hazard coming from the mountain to those towns at the moment other than the possibility of ashfall if the wind comes from a particular direction. And that causes a problem for water supplies and power supplies and so on. You mentioned that you're advising people to keep away. Are you having trouble keeping people away? I mean, there's tremendous enthusiasm, isn't there, about this magnificent theatre we're seeing? It is, but people are very good, actually. We haven't had any examples of problems today at all, and people are perhaps got a mixed emotions of excitement and just a little bit of uncertainty. Big meeting tonight in Whakapapa. Is that meeting tonight in Whakapapa? Yes, what we're doing is meeting with the residents here. There's a couple hundred people live in the village, and just explaining to them what we know and explaining what our intentions are regarding the village at the moment and answering any questions they've got. Should people really be ready to go, Paul? At the present time in Whakapapa Village, we've got our lahar warning system working, and that gives people 20 minutes. And so if the worst happened and there was a lahar down the village, we've got a minimum of 20 minutes, and we're satisfied we can evacuate people to high ground in that period of time. Paul Green, Regional Conservator for DOC in this area. I thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much.
Well, now, Ruapehu is frequently very lively. Of course, it's an unpredictable mountain, and we can see what a grand and a terrifying mountain it could be. There was the breach of the crater lake in 1953 on Christmas Eve, do you remember, which sent millions of cubic metres of water and debris screaming down the mountain, destroying a railway bridge, which caused what became known as the Tangaway disaster. And 50 years ago, almost to the day, Ruapehu was doing much the same thing as it's doing tonight. On the 22nd of September 1945, a lava dome formed in the crater lake. It was destroyed in a series of ash eruptions, and those eruptions continued for 12 months, and they were recorded on film. Look at this from the television archive.
This is a rare occurrence. Mount Ruapehu, one of New Zealand's few active volcanoes, is in eruption. On the left is the mountain's main peak, over 9,000 feet high, the highest point in the North Island. In the centre is the crater with volcanic ash pouring out of it. Down below, the ash browns out the landscape, leaving a gritty deposit everywhere. As the wind changes, another part of the mountainside gets an ash shower, and living conditions at the tourist hotel become, for the time being, a little unpleasant. The ash has not yet reached the skiing slopes, and skiers divide their time between volcano watching and sport. Amongst the skiers, government scientists take magnetic measurements, which may indicate molten rock below. Big explosions like this have been going up twice a day or more. From down towards National Park Railway Station, where the crater stands some 6,000 feet above eye level, the cauliflower clouds are seen to balloon up for at least another 6,000 feet. Cauliflower production is in full swing, the big ones filled with the crackle of many small lightning flashes. Hot samples have fallen on the blackened glacier and melted their way in. Luckily, no one was standing here at the right moment to collect this one.
Now, that's Ruapehu erupting 1945 over a 12-month period. The worst volcanic eruption in New Zealand's recent history, of course, was at Tarawera. In June of 1886, 153 people died, towns and villages washed away, and, of course, the famous pink and white terraces were destroyed. Although the ski fields have been closed and consideration is still being given to evacuating some of the smaller communities around the mountain, the reaction of many of the locals, we understand, has been one of excitement, not fear. In fact, they've been having impromptu barbies. Joining us from the mountain is Whakapapa resident and motel owner Monica Geister. Hello.
Hello, Paul.
So you've lived in Whakapapa 15 years, you've been running the motel 5 years. Something of a party atmosphere, Monica, I'm told.
Yes, there is. I don't think there is any fear around. Some people feel uneasy, of course, but and some people have left the mountain, but the general feeling is of excitement. And you can hear people cheering when the mountain erupts, and you can see the black ash flying out. And yes, you can hear them all across the village just cheering them on.
Of course, you people are very lucky. You see it on the telly one minute, then you look out the window and you see it for real, don't you?
Yes, definitely. Yes, you don't know where to look first.
Some of it must have been quite spectacular.
Well, there were some really big eruptions. Just about 3/4 of an hour ago, we had a really big one, and the billowing clouds coming out, first black and then white, and then with the sunset on them. It was just awesome, absolutely awesome. And this afternoon, we actually saw the rocks come flying out of the crater and landing in the snow. It was just, yes, absolutely spectacular.
So I suppose you're mountain people, and you know the mountain can be very tricky, don't you? I mean, you don't need city folk to tell you that. I suppose while you're enjoying it and finding it spectacular, you must also be looking at it with great respect.
Certainly. I mean, you always know that you live on an active volcano, and I believe that everybody in the village at this time is prepared to leave if we are told that we have to do so by the Department of Conservation.
What do you think, though, Monica? Is it bad for business or good for business?
Well, at the moment, of course, it's bad for business because people are leaving, but I expect that there's going to be a lot of people who would want to see the spectacular eruption, and I'm sure we're going to pick up business where we left off.
Are you nervous about the night coming?
No.
You've got plans in place should you need to make a run for it?
Definitely, yes.
Oh, well, good on you, Monica. And have you got people in your motel? Are they...
Yes, we still have some people staying, and all the staff are staying there, are doing their bit, and yes, there are still some people around.
Good on you, Monica. Well, thank you very much indeed for your time, and good luck.
Thank you.
That is Monica Geister. She runs the Scotel, I think it is, in Whakapapa. Next on the programme tonight, the family of a missing Hawara mother make a plea for her safe return. Nicky Goodwin's family. They're next.
8:35 Friday, the award-winning telemovie of a New Zealand favourite. Welcome back. Police Rescue, with on and off-duty drama.
Don't do this to me.
It's my job. The conflicts.
We're already got a wall, we might as well have a woman.
The despair.
Got to be somewhere between here and here.
The courage.
George, awake!
The hope.
We're going to find him.
Get him out now. Mickey!
It's breathtaking action. The award-winning telemovie of Police Rescue. 8:35 Friday on 1.
Can you feel the thunder rising? Feel the tension in the air. Can you feel your pulses picking up? Well, let me take you there. Can you feel your heart start as they charge? Feel it racing as they go. Do you feel you wanna scream and let it out? Oh, let me take you there. It's a heartbeat, it's a hoofbeat. Oh, let me take you there. It's a spirit, you can share it. Oh, let me take you
If you're bulging through overindulging over winter, you'll love Weight Watchers' new Easy Option low-fat, high-fibre health plan. Join Weight Watchers now and save $23.50. Pay only $14.50 with your Women's Day coupon. Phone now 0800 808 746.
Knock, knock. Ah, new computer app.
Yes.
Oh, what? How'd you score a compact?
I just asked.
Yeah, right. Like you went to Ron's office and asked if you could have a compact with a mega-fast processor and local bus graphics.
No. I just told him my old computer was as unreliable as you are, Ben.
You didn't. Yeah.
You don't want a compromise. You want a compact. Would you like a new car every 2 years? A car that's always under warranty? Then call 0800 80 20 80 now and ask about Ford red carpet options. The best way to drive a new Ford.
It's time to discover the difference Fisher windows and doors make. At your local Fisher showroom, you'll see a whole range of aluminium joinery with every style and feature option. You'll be able to make the right decision for your dream home.
It's time to find the future in aluminium. Fisher windows and doors.
Power is nothing without...
Charlotte Austin, doing an hour-long infomercial on the life and works of Ayn Rand.
Who?
So, husband of mine, not only are you going back on air with a brilliant new show, we are going to jam their frequencies. We're going to put those right-wing toe rags off the air.
Welcome to this special midday edition of One Network News as we follow the developments on Mount Ruapehu.
As you may have seen in our live updates throughout the morning, there have been more eruptions on the mountain.
After a quiet day yesterday and a night without much incident, an angry Mount Ruapehu launched back into action around 4 o'clock this morning.
Now, this shot is live from our exclusive One Network News camera in the car park of the Chateau Hotel. Now, after clear skies earlier this morning, cloud and mist are again covering the mountain's summit, masking the black marks of the lahars and the grey of falling ash.
Now, our reporter Simon Mersip has been on the volcano since the weekend, tracking its various moods as the alert was raised to 4 on Monday. That's on a scale that tops with a high danger level of 5. This was Simon's reaction just after the eruptions at dawn this morning.
The day has dawned clear, and at this hour of the morning, at about 6:30, Ruapehu has yet again mushroomed into life. It's been waxing and waning during the night. Scientists tell us that what we're seeing here now is moderate activity. Nevertheless, it looks pretty spectacular.
Now, Simon joins us now live for the very latest from Mount Ruapehu. Simon, I believe you've recently had an update from the Ministry of Defence.
That's right, Richard, we have indeed. We've got that just in the last hour or so. And they're telling us, as you've said, the level 4 remains in place. They're concerned about ash. The northerly winds are what's brought all this cloud over and covered the mountain and made the temperature drop. And that's blowing the ash possibly in the direction of the Hawke's Bay, the Wairarapa and the Manawatu. Certainly Hawke's Bay Airport remains closed, although at the moment all other airports are open. But certainly, so they're keeping very much a watching brief on the situation. We do also know this morning from closer to the mountain that DOC has decided to close more areas off. Up until now, it's been the 3 main ski fields which have been closed. They've now decided to restrict people, to keep people away from all the walking tracks around the perimeter of the mountain.
So is the problem of the ash going further afield than expected?
Well, I think that the problem is trying to gauge this wind, which is obviously very difficult. We do know that on the desert roadside this morning, we've seen Army personnel out trying to clear ash deposits off the power lines. And to the west of the mountain, over this side, we've had reports of concern from the recreational fishing industry. The Taranaki Fish and Game Council has called us up. They're very concerned about the way some rivers are looking. One river in particular, it's the Manganui Te Ao River. They say it's one of the best trout fishing rivers in the North Island. It's looking, they say, a milky grey colour. They're very concerned about pollution because they do know in the 1969 and 75 eruptions, many trout were killed. So they're very worried about that this morning.
Simon, since we last spoke to you at about 9 o'clock, conditions have really radically changed, haven't they?
They have indeed. It's that northerly wind. It's brought that cloud over, covering the mountain. The temperature's dropped. The sun's gone away. I've had to rug up. You saw I was wearing a shirt at 6:30 in the morning. It's a lot colder than that now.
Simon Mersip, live from Mount Ruapehu.
And there were some spectacular scenes as the volcano rumbled back into action this morning. They were captured by the 4 One Network News camera operators around the mountain, and also in these exclusive helicopter shots. John Stewart reports.
Alpine majesty meets the fury of an erupting volcano. Although scientists say this morning's eruption isn't as large or as intense as Saturday's, today's plume of ash spreads several thousand metres into the sky and will probably fall on an area up to 70 kilometres from Mount Ruapehu. The natural fireworks began about 4 this morning, heralded by an increase in tremors on the mountain. The ash has turned pristine snow grey. Scientists at the Institute of Geological and Nuclear Sciences say recent eruptions have nearly emptied the crater lake, spilling snow and water and mud down the volcano in Lahas. And though they class this eruption as moderate, larger, more potent eruptions could come at any time. John Stewart, One Network News.
And now joining us in the studio is one of New Zealand's leading volcanologists, Dr. Ian Smith from Auckland University. Well, Dr. Smith, I suppose that we forget, after all these years of inactivity, just how dangerous these mountains are.
Well, I think that's right. I mean, volcanoes, even the ones we think are active, have times of quiet and times of activity, and the quiet times are usually longer than the active times, so we forget about them when they're not erupting.
Dr. Smith, volcanologists have been talking about a new pattern of behaviour for Ruapehu. Is it becoming less predictable?
I wouldn't say that. I think the new behaviour that they're talking about is this seismic tremor, which indicates that magma is moving beneath the volcano. In a way, that makes them more predictable because it gives us information about what's happening underneath the volcano. So it's new only in the sense that we haven't seen it in our very short history.
Why is it so hard, then, to predict what the volcano is going to do next?
Because volcanoes are essentially very, I mean, they're unpredictable, they're unstable, they change from minute to minute and hour to hour. So although it's possible to make long-term predictions, it's very hard to say day by day what's going to happen.
From your long studies of New Zealand volcanoes, how significant is this activity on Ruapehu?
Well, you know, it's the first eruption for 50 years, first magmatic eruption. It is significant in those terms, but in fact it's really just repeating what the geological record tells us has been going on for 2,000 years.
From what you've seen today, what's your prediction as to further activity? I mean, is it going to blow?
Well, I mean, the answer really should come from the people who are professionally monitoring it down there, but I think the prediction is that it may do what it did in 1945, more activity of the kind that we've seen, perhaps dying away over months or 6 months or so. An unlikely possibility is that it will develop into a much larger eruption, but we'll get warning of that.
And if the worst did happen, would the towns at the base of the mountain be in any immediate danger?
Well, some more than others, but, you know, I'd repeat it is being very competently monitored, and there's no life-threatening situation. But I think if the eruption got bigger, then perhaps the greatest danger would be from ash falls off toward the east and perhaps into the east coast areas.
Dr. Ian Smith, Auckland volcanologist, thank you. Well, a final look now from our live camera in the car park of the Chateau. DOC staff are currently on the mountain amongst the cloud monitoring the volcano. They and the scientists hope to have a better idea later this afternoon of whether activity will increase and just how long this might go on.
One Network News is the one to watch for any developments on this breaking story. The only news service with live cameras at the mountain, and some of New Zealand's most respected reporters preparing a team coverage for tonight's news hour at 6.
Also tonight, the story of an Invercargill gunman who's been holed up in a sports store for 12 hours. Shots have been fired, but no one has been hurt. Now, of course, we'll continue our updates on the hour throughout the afternoon, and please join us at 6. Good afternoon.
Display steps up a gear after a period of calm.
Ruapehu's ash fallout takes a toll in central North Island waterways.
It is killing everything in its path.
In other story, another day of spectacular activity on Mount Ruapehu. It began early this morning as the mountain burst into life again, belching black mud and rock from the crater as huge clouds of steam and ash rose 12 kilometres into the air. This is how the mountain looks at this minute. Simon Mersip was up early this morning to see the mountain in action, and he joins us live from our camera position on the slopes of Ruapehu.
Well, what a day we've had here. A real contrast to yesterday when mist and rain shrouded the entire mountain. There's some cloud now, but the skies were clear this morning and we were treated to a grand display. On a clear day, you can see the mountain. This was Ruapehu at 6 this morning. Eruptions had been building for a couple of hours.
And at this hour of the morning, at about 6:30, Ruapehu has yet again mushroomed into life. It's been waxing and waning during the night. The scientists tell us that what we're seeing here now is moderate activity. Nevertheless, it looks pretty spectacular.
Shortly after 6:30, the most spectacular eruption of the day. This was how it looked from the One Network News camera at the Chateau. Eyewitnesses reported lightning flashes and thunder at that time. And our camera also caught the blast further away on State Highway 47 near National Park. After 7 o'clock now, this was the view travelling south down the western rim of Ruapehu towards Ohakune. One Network News also took to the air for these exclusive pictures. This is the crater spewing ash and steam after 8 o'clock. It looks fierce, but at this time, scientists reported the eruptions were only half as strong as the big one last Saturday afternoon. After all the mist and rain of yesterday, we could now clearly see how blackened the slopes around the crater had become. Also clear, new mud flows, or lahars. The flow on the left of your screen has a light grey ribbon running down the middle. That's a fresh mud flow from this morning. All this activity got the better of one man's curiosity. Mountain guide Chris Melody walked to within 1 kilometre of the summit.
I've been watching it for 3 days. I thought very carefully about where I was going to go.
Concerned Conservation Department staff removed Mr Melody and passed their concerns on to police.
I told him that he's putting other people at risk if he has a problem up there or is injured. He then puts emergency services at risk and rescuers at risk.
Not everyone has taken such a daredevil attitude to the volcano. While the skies remained clear this morning, a new outdoor cafe sprang up next to the chateau.
We've just been for a flight. That was great.
How did it look?
Oh, black.
It was pretty amazing.
Ruapehu is even causing havoc with the entertainment industry. Pop group The Headless Chickens had to cancel a concert at National Park.
Not very often that you have a natural disaster get in the way of rock and roll, so it's kind of
the other way around.
Kind of a publicity stunt, and almost, isn't it? It's great.
By late morning, northerly winds had blown clouds over the mountain. And under that shroud, Doc led a media party to the top of the Bruce Road to inspect the deserted ski village.
What we're saying is, yes, take precautions, be prepared, but we're not suggesting any evacuation or anything like that.
By the middle of the day, the mountain started to simmer down. Still, scientists have maintained a level 4 alert, meaning bigger eruptions may lie ahead.
The number of seismometers and people we have here is perfectly adequate for running the seismic observatory and keeping our surveillance aspect going. What we're now trying to do is to bring in reinforcements to maximise the amount of scientific information and value that can be gained from this eruption.
Well, Simon's with us live now. It's been quite a day, hasn't it? You said in your piece earlier this afternoon that the alert was still at level 4. Does that remain the case?
Yes, Judy, it is still at level 4 tonight, and some fresh information on that tonight. Scientists have been able to have a look at that crater lake, and they tell us that the level of the water is way down. That means the risk of lahars, of mud flows spilling over is reduced. But they do have a concern about rain on the way in the next day or two. Now, if that happens, it hits the slopes, it could wash all the ash down and create fresh lahars. The only saving grace might be that the rainwater will cool it down and help dilute the acidity.
Now, we saw a man warned off the mountain. Have there been any other problems with sightseers?
No major problems that we've heard of. They've got physical barriers across the roads, and the DOC has declared all the walking tracks around the perimeter off limits. Basically, I think they're relying on the common sense of people, and certainly from what we've been able to see here at the chateau, everyone's content to sit back in their chairs and with their binoculars and just soak in the view.
How are the atmospheric conditions affecting people down there? Your voice is pretty croaky.
Well, yes, it is a little. On this side of the mountain, ash isn't so much a concern, but several people have complained of smelling sulphur in the air and causing sore throats, and that might have something to do with my voice. The other point is, and I've done a lot of talking, not just for One Network News, but because of the huge international interest in this event, I've been speaking on a fairly regular basis with international media over the last few days.
So in summary, Simon, what's the best forecast of what might happen?
I think the position we're in tonight is that, on the one hand, there is no sign of a complete tapering off of the activity on the mountain. On the other hand, neither is there any sign of any massive, huge eruption, destructive eruption just around the corner. We're likely to see this level of moderate but pretty activity for some days to come.
Simon Mercer, live from the chateau.
Now, the ash thrown up by today's eruptions is casting a huge shadow over the central North Island. Marimina Roderick has been following the ash trail.
As Ruapehu blasts up top, they're blasting down below. It's a clean-up to clear up the North Island's main electricity line. Ash has covered power pylons on the desert road, and it's covering anything else in its path. The ash, when it falls, isn't like a rain shower. It's more in the air, a very fine grain, hard to detect through the naked eye until it hits a solid object, like your car. Drivers are being warned to carry water to wash away the acid rain, and while plenty are stopping to enjoy the sights, others have a different view in mind.
When it first went, I was more concerned about the wildlife, you know what I mean? Sort of come up to have a look and see if there was any need to just to help out if any wildlife had sort of got involved, like birds and stuff like that, do you know what I mean?
And the environment isn't looking well. Whangiwai, north of Waihuru, is being put to the test. Lahar flows have turned the river to mud.
I've been here over 20 years and I've never seen it this bad before. I guess the last time would have been in 75 and before that would have been the Tangiwai disaster, I suppose.
In 1953, a lahar flow washed away the Tangiwai Bridge, killing 151 on the Wellington-Auckland train. That bridge is now under a 24-hour watch. Further north, ash has turned waterways into pools of death.
It is killing everything in its path. The fish, the phytoplankton, and all the wildlife. And it gets in the gills of the fish and just kills them. It's too toxic.
Just 12 hours ago, this stream near Ohakune ran clear. It fed one of the North Island's top trout fishing spots. Not anymore. The danger of ash fallout is greatest on the southern slopes, and some are taking extra precautions for their families, even the little members. Maramina Roderick, One Network News.
And people with property damaged by fallout from Ruapehu should contact the Earthquake and War Damage Commission. It's a free phone number, 0800 652 333. That's 0800 652 333 for property damage. And if the damage is to your motor vehicle, the Commission says to contact your insurance company.
And the fire service is gearing up for a possible major eruption. Fire appliances from around the Auckland region were taken to a Civil Defence emergency briefing. The Waikato and Bay of Plenty regions are also getting prepared. But the Auckland session was cut short, with crews called away to contain an aviation fuel spill. An Air Force tanker carrying 20,000 litres of fuel overturned. Houses in the area were evacuated, but no one was injured.
While seismologists record tremors deep inside the volcano, there's been another earthquake in the South Island. It measured 4.9 on the Richter scale and was centred near Big Bay in Fiordland. It struck before dawn and was felt in the Haast area and across Otago and Southland, but there are no reports of damage. It's the fourth quake in as many days that's registered at least 4 on the Richter scale. The others were in Marlborough and near Wellington and Wanganui. Scientists say they're not linked to the Ruapehu eruptions.
Our other major story...
Since eruptions began on Saturday. The flying visit came during a lull in activity, but the scientists say the action is far from over. And there's a danger the crater wall may collapse, triggering another big mud flow. David Jameson has this exclusive report from on top of the mountain.
2,000 metres up, and Ruapehu is still steaming. This is the closest anyone has been since Saturday's large eruption. Attention is now focused on this area, the pyramid, heavily eroded by the eruptions and possibly in danger of collapse. Fighting strong winds, we were able to land on the summit, scientists taking the opportunity to observe the changing volcano firsthand.
Well, the volcano around near the summit is very unstable, loose ash and so on, scoria. With the eruptions continually battering against it, we are concerned that there may be some collapses and so on.
That could trigger another surge of mud flows down the Whangiahu River Valley on the volcano's eastern slope. The flight also offered a glimpse of something scientists haven't seen for 50 years, something visible only because the lake level has dropped dramatically.
Yes, there are terraces on the northern edge of the lake, which we believe were last seen about 1946, after the eruptive sequence then, before the lake actually formed again and filled in the 300-metre deep hole that was there.
Much of what was once a snowfield could now be the surface of the moon, pockmarked with impact craters from rocks thrown up by eruptions. But these scenes could change again.
If it carries like 1945, there may be lava which will arise, displace the lake as we see it now, and there may be a lava dome sitting there, eruptions occurring over a period of months with lulls between.
Even as we flew around the crater, a small reminder of what Ruapehu is capable of. There is now a network of 15 seismographs monitoring the eruptions from various points around the mountain.
For now, Ruapehu appears to have entered a quiet phase. But for scientists, it's simply a case of sitting, watching and waiting. David Jameson, One Network News.
And our live cameras remain focused on the volcano should activity resume. In the meantime, ski fields and local communities are now realising the economic impact of the eruptions. They can't open until the mountain has been inactive for at least 5 consecutive days. And as Simon Shepherd reports, that's costing jobs.
The innocent victims of Ruapehu's rumblings. With Turoa ski fields shut indefinitely, these cafe workers are out of a job.
I'm going home. Yeah. I'm just going to be hanging around Ohakuni for a while, about a week or so, and just see what the mountain does.
200 staff have uncertain futures, and even though the field isn't in the path of mud flows or lahars, it has to stay closed.
We still are in danger of something larger happening, but we're very much shielded by a shield of rock up at the top end.
And that's what ski field management are explaining to shell-shocked businesses.
Unfortunately, Turoa has been directed to close by various government agencies, as well as closing the mountain road.
It's $1 million economic ripple that goes through Ohakuni's commercial heart and around the mountain to Whakapapa, to ski operators.
We would have had 5 staff working flat out here today, given that the weather was fine.
And to luxury accommodation.
Yes, it has been rather drastic. It sort of takes us back to what we normally would be doing in May, which is our quietest month of the year.
And the news gets worse. A week-long spring snow festival has been postponed for Turoa and Ohakuni. The ski industry may be on hold and tourist numbers down, but Ohakuni says it will fight back starting this Saturday with its annual festival of the Carrot. And businesses are now hoping to market the area for sightseers, not skiers. People are already adapting. The latest addition on some menus, the Ruapehu Laha. Simon Shepherd, One Network News.
Looks good. Just to the north of Ruapehu, Mount Narahoe has been conspicuous by its silence. Traditionally, it's been the more active volcano, but not anymore. John Stewart explains.
Narahoe as it's been the past few years, no sign of smoke. This classically shaped volcano, just 16 kilometres from Ruapehu, is sleeping at the moment. But the mountain named for a sacrificed slave has a more rowdy reputation than Ruapehu. It blew dramatically back in 1953. Turned on another performance in 1968. And could always be relied on through the 70s and early 80s as a smoking landmark for desert road motorists, while nearby Ruapehu slumbered. But the roles are now reversed.
There are no connections between the volcanoes, and the recent eruptions have shown us that Narahoe has a different magma composition, slightly different physical characteristics, therefore slightly different eruption style. So it's no surprise that it's keeping quiet at the moment.
And for people worried the Ruapehu eruptions are somehow a reaction to French nuclear testing, volcanologist Ian Smith invites them to join the Flat Earth Society.
This one's nonsense, and I'd have to say they were sorely misinformed.
So much for the French connection. John Stewart, One Network News.
4 people were taken to Auckland Hospital. Far away as Wellington this news hour. An airspace limitation because of ash fallout now extends almost as far as the capital, and delays are expected on flights into Wellington. The volcano burst into life again this morning. Renewed eruptions combined with wind to send the ash cloud south, prompting the widest airspace limitation since the volcano alert first began last week. The limited area includes Palmerston North and Paraparaumu. No flights are allowed in the zone after nightfall. We cross live to the volcano shortly, but first David Jameson reports from Mount Ruapehu. The level 4 volcanic alert is still firmly in place.
Shrouded in cloud, Ruapehu had begun making more clouds of its own. An ash cloud thrown 6 kilometres into the air. It fell in Ohakuni to the southwest and as far afield as Tangawai near Waiouru. Scientists moved onto the mountain immediately, gathering data from seismographs.
It records data onto a disc, and we take this back to Waireki, and the scientists there look at that data.
They also recorded an accompanying earthquake within the mountain, hitting 3.2 on the Richter scale. And another visible sign of the eruption, the river at the Tangawai Bridge, a thick soup of mud, ash and boulders, after a lahar travelling at 50 kilometres an hour swept through. There's also growing concern about local trout fisheries. A close watch is being kept on the acidity of rivers in the area. Pollution's already taken a toll on fish.
A small number of trout and native fish were found dead there yesterday, but it appears that the
toxic water came through relatively slowly and gave the fish a chance to move ahead of the advancing contamination and move up into the unaffected tributaries.
On the peak of the mountain itself, a ghostly Turoa ski field is now silent. This morning as the mountain bubbled, last staff prepared to leave. Even so, they don't think the ski season is over.
We don't believe so. We're still very hopeful that there's going to be some good spring skiing. The ash, from what we saw when it was clear before, has yet to affect our ski area, but we're just taking all safety precautions so we can be ready to go as soon as we require.
As a precaution, snow groomers are being moved off the mountain. 2/3 of Skifield's staff have been laid off. Losses run into hundreds of thousands of dollars. While today's eruption hasn't been on the scale of those earlier in the week, it's still the biggest here in 36 hours. A sobering reminder that Ruapehu hasn't finished just yet. David Jameson, One Network News.
And cloudy weather continues around the mountain at this moment. This is the view from one of our exclusive live cameras set up just 4 kilometres from the Grand Chateau. The mountains remained relatively quiet, as you heard, since its eruption around 8:30 this morning sent ash kilometres into the air. You can just see the volcano still steaming at regular intervals. You can also see the snow on the lower slopes, the top of the mountain quite cloudy. And as we reported at the top of the news hour, owing to winds, an ash cloud airspace warning now extends as far south as it's been, south past Masterton in fact, and to the west the Ohakea Air Base is grounded. Mail from Palmerston North Mail Centre has to be trucked out this evening because of the disruption to air travel. And we'll keep you updated across the news hour.
Temperatures are rising in French Polynesia tonight. The second French nuclear test is expected any day now. But the volcano has been cloaked in cloud and relatively quiet today, allowing the no-fly zone to be reduced. Simon Shepherd reports.
They came to see, but this morning the mountain wouldn't